Tell how the angels in chorus sang as they welcomed his birth. Glory to God in the highest, peace and good tidings to earth. Tell me the story of Jesus.
Hello, and welcome to The Detectives. My name is Ian, and today we're going to learn about something that happened in the life of Jesus of Nazareth, the most amazing man who ever lived. Our story is called Give Her Something to Eat, and is case number 10. And when we have learned what happened, we will ask ourselves the question, how did he do that? Now, we don't know what Jesus looked like. He lived over 2,000 years ago in a land called Judea, before they had invented cameras or videos or mobile phones or anything. But we do know that he was Jewish because he had a Jewish mother. And we imagine, therefore, that he looked like this man who is standing here in front of these people. Jesus came from Nazareth, so people called him Jesus of Nazareth. And he loved to teach people about God. And people loved to hear him. Sometimes they came in hundreds and sometimes they came in thousands to listen to him. But not only was he a wonderful teacher, he could do wonderful things. He did what we call miracles. And a miracle is something spectacular that happens that nobody can explain why it happened. On this particular day that I am thinking about, Jesus is walking through the village. And as he walks through the village, a man comes to him who's called Jairus. Jairus was a very important man in the village. He was the ruler of the synagogue, and the synagogue was the place where everybody went every week to worship God. He is a very important man, but he has a problem. His 12-year-old daughter is so sick that he thinks she is going to die soon. They didn't have the hospitals that you and I have today. They didn't have the medicines. They didn't have the doctors. And he's afraid his daughter is going to die. And he hears that Jesus is in town, and he decides to go and ask him. And he comes to him and he kneels down in front of him and he says, "Please come to my house. My daughter is nearly dead. And I want you to touch her and make her better." You see, people had already heard that Jesus could do miracles. Jesus sees how upset the man is, and he says to him, "Of course, I will come down to your house now, and I will see your daughter." But there's a problem. The problem is this, that there are so many people that have heard that Jesus is in town that it takes a long time to go down through the street to the house of Jairus. People are crowding around, they're talking, they're pushing, they're shoving, and poor old Jairus is getting more and more upset. I expect you would as well, because he knows his daughter is nearly dead. And the longer it takes Jesus to get there, the worse it's going to be. But there's another problem. There's another lady in the village as well who wants to get hold of Jesus. You see, she has been sick for 12 years. She has been bleeding for 12 years and she hasn't been able to stop the bleeding. And can you imagine how weak and sick she must have felt to be bleeding for 12 years? And she's wasted, I should say, she has spent so much money on doctors and medicines and nobody has made her better. And she knows that Jesus is in town and she thinks, I'm going to see him. But it is embarrassing to tell him what my problem is, because according to the laws of the Jews in those days, if you were bleeding, you weren't allowed out into public. You weren't allowed out into the street. You couldn't go to the synagogue to worship God. You had to stay at home. And so she thinks, I better not tell people who it is, that it's me. So I will go secretly down the street. And all I want to do is just touch Jesus. She says, I believe that if I just touch him, he will be able to make me better. So she goes through the crowd. She pushes her way through. Eventually, she finds herself right behind Jesus, and she reaches out her hand and she touches the bottom of his coat. And immediately she touches him, she has stopped bleeding. And she knows she has stopped bleeding. And she feels well again. For the first time in 12 years, she is well. And she turns away and pushes her way through the crowd to get away from him, because she doesn't want him to know that she's touched him. She doesn't want anybody to know that she's in the crowd. But Jesus stops. And the crowd stops as well. And as she's pushing her way through the crowd, she hears Jesus say, "Who touched my clothes?" His disciples are a bit cross. "What do you mean, Jesus, who touched my clothes? In a crowd like this, everybody has touched your clothes. We've all been pushed and shoved. How can you possibly say, who touched my clothes? Who touched my coat?" But Jesus knows that somebody has touched his coat in a special way, not just by pushing him or shoving him, but she has touched his coat with faith, with believing that she was better. If you look at this particular photograph, you might see on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a lady who's trying to get away with a brown head covering on, and she's trying to hide, but she can't hide. So she comes to him, and he's waiting for her. And she says, "Lord, I touched you." And she's embarrassed, but she's better. She's well. And Jesus says to her with a great deal of kindness, "Go on your way, my dear. Your faith in me has made you better." How did he do that? How did just touching his coat make her better? That was a miracle that nobody could explain. But Jairus is upset. You see, she has taken up so much of Jesus' time by touching him, and Jesus stopping and saying, "Who touched me?" and talking to her, that the servants from Jairus' house come to him and say, "Don't bother the master Jesus anymore. It's too late. Your daughter is already dead." Dead! And Jairus is very upset. Why did this woman waste my time? Why did this woman stop Jesus and hold us all up? It's now too late. My daughter isn't just sick, she's dead. It's too late. But Jesus sees him. And Jesus knows that he's upset. And Jesus says to him, "Don't worry, just believe." Believe what? Just believe in me. And Jesus goes on down the street to Jairus' house. And when he gets there, the people are crying. "She was only 12 and she's dead. How can you be dead when you're only 12? She should have grown up. She should have had children. She should have been, oh, why is it too late? She's only a girl. and they're crying and they're wailing and they're howling. And Jesus says, "Be quiet." And he goes upstairs to the bedroom. He takes with him some of his disciples, Peter, James, and John. And he goes into the bedroom. And there is the girl lying on the bed. And they've covered her with a sheet because she is dead. But Jesus comes up to her and he touches her hand. And although she is dead, he says to her, "My little girl, my daughter, get up." Peter, James, and John think, what's the point of saying that? And her mum and dad think, what's the point of saying that? She's dead. Why say get up? But she wakes up. She opens her eyes. She looks at Jesus. She is no longer dead. She is alive again. And everybody in the room, Peter, James, John, and her mum and dad, are amazed. A minute ago she was dead, and now she is alive. And Jesus says to them, "Give her something to eat. She's been sick for a long time. She's hungry. She needs some strength. Give her something to eat, but don't tell anybody else what I have done." How did he do that? How did he make somebody who was dead come back to life again? He didn't give her any medicine. He didn't give her any treatment. He didn't give her any special rescue. He merely touched her hand and said, "Get up." And she did. Now, if you have been listening to our stories from case number 1 to case number 9, you will know that Jesus could do spectacular things. But this surely is the most spectacular so far, to make a dead person live again. How did he do that? He did that because of his secret. His secret was that although he was a man, he was also God. And God can do anything. He can make sick people better. He can walk on water. He can turn water into wine. And he can even bring dead people back to life again. I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I'm sure Jairus believed it on that day as well as his family. Do you? I hope you do. Because you cannot be a real Christian if you don't believe that Jesus, although he was a man, was also God, who came into this world to look after people, to heal people, to care for people, to love people, to teach them about God, and most of all, to forgive us our sins, because he is God. And the little girl got up, and she lived again, because the Son of God brought her back to life. Remember the question? How did he do that? How did he heal a woman just by letting her, by her touching his coat? How did he heal this girl, bring her back to life again just by touching her hand? He did it because Jesus is God.
Fasting alone in the desert, tell of the days that are past, how for our sins he was tempted, yet was triumphant at last. Tell of the years of his life, Tell of the sorrow he bore. He was despised and afflicted, homeless, rejected, and poor. Tell me the story of Jesus, write on my heart every word. Tell me the story most precious, sweetest that ever was heard. Tell of the cross where they nailed him, writhing in anguish and pain. Tell of the grave where they laid him, tell how he liveth again. Love in that story so tender, clearer than ever I see. Say, let me weep while you whisper, love paid the ransom for me. Tell me the story of Jesus, write on my heart every word. Tell me the story most precious, sweetest that ever was heard.